First order of business is to review the agenda. As you might guess, it's 5:05, so we're already 5 minutes behind, but that's all right, we'll catch up. Anyone have any additions or deletions to the agenda or changes or anything they'd like to see changed other than what's presented to you? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next order of business. At 5:05, and start with Nicole. She can update us about the court case, budgets and delays and so forth.
Okay, thanks. So, I think there were, last month's meeting, attendance was a little spotty because of the weather. And a lot of people were participating in a lot of different ways. So I thought I'd give a little bit of background so folks sort of understand the moment in time that we're in. And it centers around the question of whether or not the General Assembly should delay implementation of the state board's orders to merge by 1 year. And early on, we were given signals from House and Senate leadership early in the session that they didn't have an interest in doing that. But at some point in January, the Speaker of the House came to an agreement with Representative Shorman from Stowe that they would hold a vote on the question of whether or not to delay on the House floor, essentially putting the House Education Committee in a difficult position in terms of needing to put an option to be voted on because many of them did not support a blanket delay. I didn't have guidance from the board at that point, so as per our policies and bylaws, I reached out to the executive committee and asked for guidance. And the guidance I received at that time, further complicating matters was the fact that there was a lawsuit filed in three different lawsuits filed, and one of which asked for the preliminary injunction from a Superior Court judge. So there was a lot of uncertainty in the field about what was going to happen, and this board had not really had an opportunity to have that conversation. So the guidance I received from the executive committee at the time was that we were not prepared to take a position on the question of delay, but just to ensure that the committee was informed of the practical implications of the language that they were working on, and also to ensure that like we always do, we're able to connect members with different points of view to the committee if they seek our help with that. So that's sort of the role we played in the House. I did offer testimony that was construed by many members as being opposed to a delay or against their wishes. So despite my attempt to walk a line and weigh in on language without a position, it was construed as we took a position, and I received a lot of feedback about that. So that in the February meeting, I came to this board and said, I need something better than that for the Senate. Again, at that time, the judge had not ruled in the case. There had been a hearing on the motion for preliminary injunction. And so after a good discussion here, you all decided to pass a motion unanimously, I believe, that the first message is for the legislature to wait to see what the judge ruled, and if they were going to move forward with delay, irrespective of the judge's ruling, then our role would again not taking a position be to try to inform and weigh in on the language. So the Senate Education Committee chose to wait for the court's ruling. I shared that with you all. The judge went out of his way to address the merits of the case, and sent signals at least to how he might rule overall on the case in terms of the plaintiff's claims. Of course, any ruling from a lower court judge can be appealed to the Supreme Court, so it's not a a sure thing. But that certainly sent signals as to the disposition of that particular court on the issues. That happened right before town meeting day. The General Assembly's on break for town meeting week, so they came back. And for some reason, I was listed as the first witness. And they had asked if I wanted to testify or, or put me on the list, and I said to Senator Baruth, I don't really know what you want from me. I don't have a whole lot to say. And then when I came, was preparing for the week, I reviewed the agenda and realized that I was the first witness, which really didn't feel appropriate. That the Agency of Education should be first, and potentially the Senate Ed Committee itself in terms of developing a plan that it wants reaction to, given that we don't have a position at this time. So at the same time, I started to receive emails in what seemed to be a coordinated campaign asking that I not testify. And so the executive committee met, and I shared with them my concerns about being the first witness on this issue, and they agreed that it made sense to wait until the agency and or the committee gave us something to respond to. And so they sent an email to the members, I'm sure you all saw earlier this week, to that effect. Yesterday in the Senate Ed Committee, Senator Baruth put an amendment to H39 on the table, which I'll walk you through in a few minutes. But that amendment it wasn't listed on their calendar. There was sort of no way of knowing that was going to be the first order of business. He then asked me directly whether I wanted to testify after the agency testified today, and I said I need to wait until Thursday to testify because the board is meeting on Wednesday and I need guidance from them because now we actually have a court decision and we have new language. The dynamics have changed since they last talked about this. So my name appeared on the agenda for tomorrow as a witness. Shortly around 10 a.m. this morning, I started receiving emails from board members demanding that I take myself off the schedule, and that I was defying the orders of the executive committee. I'm trying to share this. It's not doing it. Just some examples for you to see. I think I received, here's a couple for one. Appalled that I'm on the agenda to testify. One email subject line was shame on you, and the text of the email in all caps was take your name off the agenda. Spoke with Clarence and Neil this morning about this email campaign, and Clarence sent out an email to everyone that we received an email from explaining that the executive committee had not ordered me to testify, but to wait until the agency and others had gone first, and that you were going to be talking about it as a board tonight.
Nicole?
Yeah?
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I can't see what everyone else is looking at. Is there any way for the people on the web to see what you guys are looking at? Maybe it's not important, but I can't tell.
I don't think so. I just got a new one. Please remove your name from the testimony list. Probably 15 emails. Do the right thing. I mean, it's all the same sort of sentiment. merger will dramatically impact our community in a negative way. So,
This way,
Armory isn't a part of the NCSU.
I'm just curious as to what board
That's
members, are they
interesting.
this board or school board members?
I don't believe, there might have been one from a board member from this board.
But they're coming from other school
from
board members?
school board members
Okay.
in towns that are impacted, many of whom are involved in the lawsuit. So
So the
who
fact
are-
that they don't know who sets the legislative calendar and agenda can be forgiven.
A lot of them addressed in the email that I was looking at the calendar and I see you're on it, go take your name off, you shouldn't be on it, you're defying an order of the executive committee. Well, she's not. And we responded to the email and made that clear, that one, we're waiting for the agency, two, we're waiting for language from the committee, and our path forward would be discussed at the meeting tonight by the full board. The timing is right. The executive committee is just not gonna arbitrarily run off and make decisions about this when it's not timely for them to do it. It's a responsibility of this board. So, just let Nicole kick it off as an overview. She's reflected that we sent the letter out in the beginning when we had some responses that this is still a wait and see attitude that we had from last minute. The court case came in, we were waiting for that. We're waiting for something Senate Ed was gonna do. Now we have language from Senate Ed. Now we have something from the AOE. Now we have something to talk about. You know, it's just that simple. It transmits, so these are, if a board member wanted to see any of these, you could see them. Before the other letter went out, we had pros and cons coming from the letter we sent out. Very good, you know, or before we sent the letter out from the board. This is very good, keep going. This is disastrous, don't do it, you know? So.
Yeah, I mean, we received several emails from people who were dismayed by the fact that we might have taken ourselves out of the legislative conversation.
So, but that's where we stand. So
Would you say
what I
that-
would like to do is, Nicole's given us an overview.
Can I do an overview of the bill too?
Yes.
before- Yeah.
She'll continue this, and then we'll go around and everyone can have a chance to have some input on this. And then we'll see how it all turns out with all the discussion, and then we'll see if we can't formulate something that can be voted on probably the way the time's gonna work, probably right after dinner. By the time we get, you know, with 20 plus of us, a couple minutes apiece, you know, pretty quick, we're talking about some serious time here. But this is a very important issue, so I ask people to be patient and listen, and then we'll formulate some kind of decision that we can all live with. So to that end, we'll let Nicole finish up. She has a few more
So
things.
I believe you all got the language in Senate Ed. We've printed it out for you as well. It's a slightly new version. I think it's important that this board, and frankly, the Senate Education Committee also, understand that, Senator Baruth, who's the chair of the Senate Education Committee, appears to be driving this language, and I believe has the support of the committee, although that could change depending on the testimony they continue to take over the next couple of days. But the sort of narrative is a 1-year time will allow these places to put the fundamentals together in a way that that is going to be lead to a better outcome. And politically, that they're in a difficult position and need to sort of just extend the deadline because it's just sort of the right thing to do in the best interest of these districts. But they're also very clear that, at least Senator Baruth has said now 3 or 4 times, this is not an indication that we're backing off of this law, you know, I don't want you back here next year. So, that said, most of the witnesses that have testified to date, and certainly the bulk of the emails that I've personally received, have not indicated specifically what the new time will allow for in terms of the operational concerns or considerations associated with this July versus next July. The arguments have largely been, we don't want to merge. And,
We want geography.
and we want the court case to have time to play out, and, you know, here's what the state board got wrong here, or, you know, sort of a re-litigation of, how Act 46 has been implemented to date. So, one, thing I note when I hear testimony, when I take information from our membership, is that a 1-year extension does not appear to be, well, the folks who are calling for a 1-year extension, I don't see evidence that, you know, well, if, once we get that, we're getting to work, next week to start the process. It's sort of a, you know, sort of moving the timeline down, and we'll see how other things play out, whether it be within the courts or whether it be next year in an election year. So I think there's a little bit of a disconnect between the message that the Senate is sending out and the information they're receiving from witnesses. So that's just for your information. And I also know that the Superintendent's Association, in preparation for their testimony, has conferred with most of the superintendents affected by the order, all of whom have said, we can get it done. It's not a question of not being able to get it done. It's a question of people not wanting to do it. So I think that's information for you to have.
I was just curious, you know, since the, you know, H39 was passed by the House, and this is a, you know, Senate version, still, the process then is that those have to be
Melded in some way.
okay.
And I have also said, have it be something very different from what the House does, and then have it be in a conference committee for Lord knows how long, and then we're in April. You know, figure out what you want to do it, and get it done. So, but that's not I don't have much sway at the moment with Senator Baruth, it appears. So, in terms of, this is a very different approach. So, let me just walk you through what this amendment does. Sort of has a preamble, like nothing in this is intended to weaken Acts 46 or 49. But says, essentially, that the operational deadline for school district mergers can be July 1, 2019 or July 1, 2020. And that the decision about the operational merger will be the new board of the merged entity. So, just from a practical standpoint, many of the districts who are under orders to merge gave themselves a delay at their organizational meetings, so they postponed action. So organizational meetings have not taken place, which means a transitional board has not been sworn in, which means that board has not been able to warn an election. So there's some work that needs to be done in order to seat that board. And petitions haven't been issued because the election date hasn't been warned, and so one concern raised by the agency today that I also started to think about immediately was, well, if the first election of this board, if the first act of this board is to decide whether or not to delay, what impact does that have on the election dynamics of that initial board? Mm-hmm. It turns it into a single issue election, and really politicizes that entity coming out of the gate. So that's just so that board, their first order of business is just to decide when they want to become operational. If they don't determine the operational date, this is sort of new language, like if they don't meet or they don't get the election warned in time, then they are a July 1, 2019. So it's intended to, at least from Senator Bruce, the way he talked about it today was, this bill at least gets you to a point where you have a board, because it's intended to create that kind of pressure, I guess. And then, as a sweetener, I guess, to move forward with July 1, 2019, if the new merged board votes to become operational this year, then they can keep their small schools grants as a merger support grant. Another question that arises for me is, depending on the makeup of this new board, that's a big decision to ask people to make as probably their first meeting, because there's not gonna be a lot of time. And so if you don't have the context and history and understanding of the budget to really understand the pros and cons of relinquishing the small schools grant, or if you've elected a board that is just committed to their voters or vote and delay no matter what, I don't know how much of a sweetener that is, and I think it just makes the stakes really high in a way that's not necessarily productive. And then there's a provision for a default budget. So if the district doesn't have, so right now, under current law, if you don't have a budget by July 1st or June 30th, then you can borrow up to 87% of last year's budget. It's a way to make sure you don't cease operations come July 1 if your budget doesn't pass. But it's not clear that that language applies to newly merged budgets or districts because they don't have a prior year's budget. And so this language not only it goes further than that and says that if you don't have a budget by June 30th, then the budget is the cumulative ed spending from the school budgets of the forming districts, plus an increase that is the average statewide increase in ed spending, which this year was 3% and change. So it provides that sort of backstop, which I think a lot of folks are worried about in terms of the tight timelines. I think this is, so that language was presented yesterday. The Agency of Education testified today and had a pretty strong position against delay. And you can see in their memo the reasons why. I will just say, personally, it's been very difficult to watch this unfold and the emails that I received today were not, and earlier this week, were not upsetting because I received a bunch of emails saying that I'm defying my bosses, essentially. But because I know that I'm now on the receiving end of a campaign that's been played out in many communities across the state. And it's been played out board member against board member against administrator, community member against all of the above. And it's really unfortunate that this is the issues that have been created by folks, dissatisfaction with a law that was passed 4 years ago has gotten us to this place where districts are not able to issue contracts to their employees. There's really nasty stuff happening right now. So,
All right.
that's the context.
So, that's context. I'd like to start with the people on the phone, just so we don't lose them. So, I'm not sure of everybody that's on the phone, but I think, Adrian, are you there? Can you hear me? Kim, are you there?
Oh,
We lose them already?
Is there anybody on the phone?
I am here, this is Dan.
Dan, Kim, and Lori are all on GoToMeeting.
Is there somebody on the phone?
Dan's on the phone.
But
Dan.
it's just coming
He's over
from
there.
here.
Well,
Yeah,
He's
they're
over
not
there.
coming, so hopefully they can hear.
hear his voice. Dan's over there. Who else?
Dan, Kim,
And Lori?
and Lori.
Are they all over there?
Yes.
Clarence, this is Dan, maybe I can.
Yeah, wait, we can't hear.
Wait,
you.
hang on,
The
Dan.
mic-
Dan, stop with the story.
Okay,
Let me
let's,
go ahead.
Not yet.
We gotta get you louder.
There's no way to do that.
No.
Okay, I'll talk right into wherever this microphone is.
just a second, Dan, they're turning up the volume. So hopefully the rest of the board members can hear.
Is it all the way up? Dan, try it now.
Okay. How's that, is that better?
That's better. Who else is there? Lori and
Kim.
Kim? All right. Lori, you want to start us off?
Seems like Dan's
See,
got-
Dan, if you
No, I defer to Dan.
What did you say?
So
Defer
defer to Dan.
Dan.
Defers to Dan. All right, Dan, you start with us off.
Thank you, Clarence. First of all, I would like to say to Nicole that some of my local school board members have copied me on copies of email that they have sent to you, and I have replied to some of the local people expressing to them that I disagreed with the tone, the tenor of their emails. I'm not responsible for any of these emails having been sent to you, and yet I apologize to you for what I think are simply inappropriate tone and tenor of the emails. However, I do feel that the letter that the executive committee sent out does make it pretty clear that the VSBA should be very careful to remain completely neutral. And you know, Nicole, that whatever you do, no matter what it is going to be carefully scrutinized. I'm not saying that you should or should not. My preference would be that you not testify, but if you do, I think you should, as you already know, you really have to be careful not to put yourself in a position where what you say can be misconstrued. And if I can go just a little bit further, I disagree with some of what you just said, Nicole. You make it sound as if the democratically elected members of school boards, either existing or the new ones, can't be trusted, or I don't know, maybe I'm misconstruing what you just said, but I would like to really come down strongly on the side of whoever gets elected to either existing boards or new ones. That seems to me a pretty clear indication of what the community would like to do. So again, as you pointed out, yes, we have been in fractured territory, but I think that that it needs to play out in the communities. And as everybody there knows, and especially Nicole, this part of the state is really the hotbed of where it's all happening. And I think that a year, especially as I think the way Baruth has put this together is pretty nice. It's saying that, you know, you can continue to merge if you're in the process of doing so, but if you need that extra time, he feels that it should be allowed, and I guess that seems like a good way to go to me. So thank you all, and I'll shut up now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Lori, and that, you want to go now, Lori?
Okay. So, I heard one thing that's gonna affect the kids. If nothing happens, if we do nothing, if no amendments pass, what happens?
And the districts have to be operational July 1 of this year.
Okay, so everybody has to scramble to do what they've been told they have to do, right?
Right, and I believe I have in the packet the guidance from the Agency of Education that sort of lays out for people, you have time, the time is tight, and you gotta get going now. So,
And if those boards refuse to cooperate, what happens to the kids?
I would say that I think that's why it's very important that, that it not be left to nothing happening. I think a default budget mechanism really needs to be in place. Otherwise, it's not clear that the new district will have access to funds to begin operating. I think you could argue that the current law applies to the new districts, but it would sure make it easier for folks to issue contracts, et cetera, if they knew that there was a backstop.
I think that,
That condition applies this July or next July. I mean, either way, that'll be an issue.
And if it was left, there's no delay, and, do all these, I think I heard you say that there were some blocking and some boards not in existence. If there is no delay, are there boards that can run these newly created districts so that even if we passed a law that said this is the budgetary you're supposed to use, that the board exists in order to manage that budget?
I believe so. The default articles of agreement establish a transitional board. The memorandum from the Agency of Education cites a language in the default articles. It basically says in the absence of a board, that board has the powers and duties associated with so they need to warn the election. But if nobody runs for the board, or you know, there's been a lot of creativity applied to date. So I'm not sure what it could look like, but I believe the interpretation of the agency is that the transitional boards can function until a board is elected.
Okay, do you have any more, Lori, you wanna add?
I mean, I think as a school board member, it's my fiduciary responsibility to ensure that the students in my district get a quality education, and the taxpayers of my district get a quality education at a reasonable price. And I think, I think that's our focus as school board. And if we believe that the law exists and it's clear what the law is, I don't quite understand why we would want to change it. And if it does need to be clarified, then I would think we would be behind that. And now I'm finished. Thank you.
Okay, and Kim was the third one on there? Are you there, Kim? Is she gone?
I think she's still on there, but she's not feeling well, so her voice was, oh, there she is.
Can you hear me
She's
now?
Yes, we can hear you,
I
Kim.
apologize. I was not able to unmute. So I continue to feel as though there has been a lot of opportunity over many years for folks to have complied with what was clear under the law, and some delays built in to provide some accommodation. I know that there are so many mandates coming down for education that require cohesive approach and attention on the benefits of all kids. And so I, as a district who's been unified for a couple of years now, the work is not easy, and the longer it takes to get started, the harder the process will be to comply with all that's expected of education in the coming years. So I don't believe there should be need for further delay. I have terrible concern with asking the communities that have struggled so hard and not been able to come to consensus on the matter to ask new board members who may or may not have either experience or the knowledge base to come into this, even those that have either previously been at each other or who are coming together new to make substantial decisions in bringing a new district together when that may be delayed by an election that is fraught with politicization of something that really calls for a unified approach to doing what's right for kids.
Okay, thank you. Were you finished? Yeah, I think.
I am. Thank
Not a
you.
hard
Yeah.
time hearing the report.
I am for now.
For now. I'll skip David because he's brand new. He's on the agenda. He's on the agenda to be considered to be appointing to the board. So please, folks, don't scare him away. You know, before we even get started. But I do want to make one point about this whole thing that all of us have to remember before we get going is in the state of Vermont, if you're a member of a school board or a supervisory union or a union district, we exist at the pleasure of the state of Vermont. We exist at the pleasure of those people and under the Golden Dome and the governor. Now we can try to influence what they're doing, but the bottom line is they're the boss.
Or we get rid of them.
Well, you can, every 2 years you can do that, but it hasn't happened, so therefore we have to live with what's there. And sometimes we think we live in our own fiefdom and we ought to be able to just make the rules because we know what's best. Well, if they say you don't know what's best, we have to accept that. Argue about it, vote them out of office. But that doesn't happen for the last few years, so we have to put that in the back of our memory. Now, I already told David we're going to skip him. That means that Amy gets the hot seat next. Yeah.
Can I suggest, since we're going to consider appointing David to the board, and he's here, that could we potentially do that now and then give him a voice? It's your meeting, so.
I do have a voice. So I really appreciate being, I mean, I could ask a question, but I'd much prefer to listen and understand what's going on first before I venture forth, so.
I thought we'd listen, and then I thought maybe we'd do that, so.
Okay.
David is not shy.
I didn't make me one. So, Amy?
Okay. Excuse me. As a member of a board of a district that worked very hard for at least 2 years on a merger process and involved our communities, I agree with Kim that it takes a lot of work and a lot of conversation in your community, and that any further delay will make it more difficult. And there's also a fairness, I suppose, of the fact that there are districts who saw that it's a state law, and in some ways it feels like all of the districts that are saying we need a delay are saying, well, if we wait long enough and we drag our feet long enough, we're not going to have to do anything with this law. And for those of us who took it seriously from the very beginning, we asked our representatives to ensure that this law was enforced. That if we were to tell our communities, this is a law and this is what we're doing, we're including all of you in these conversations, then the state needs to follow through and not say, okay, you guys did all the work, but these people who don't want to do all the work aren't going to have to. And in some ways, or even a really big way, even the report from the agency of, or the Board of Education on which schools, which districts were going to have to merge and which ones were not going to have to, was somewhat arbitrary instead of, because I know of 2 districts that were told that the reasons that they stated for not merging were not valid, but because they said they didn't want to merge, would not have to merge. And then there are other districts that, so it does seem a little bit arbitrary, but at the same time, I think the state needs to enforce Act 46 and support the districts that have done all of the work. And in order to do that, they need to make sure that other districts also do the work.
Okay. We have to speed it up.
I know, I was
Sorry.
just gonna say
Sorry, I'm
ditto.
No, that's all right.
You basically summarized my point of view exactly. My other argument is that I do not hear those districts talking about their students. I hear them talking about a lot of other things, but I don't hear them saying that merging or not merging is in their students' best interest, and that's what's at heart. And I know elected officials have have divine inspiration, and everything they say and do is absolutely perfect. But by God, we've done a tremendous amount of work to get this stuff going, and it's not getting easier. So they best be getting on board and looking at their kids, at their students, for what is going to improve their education.
Jim?
Dave and I have a little bit of work to do yet to get all of Bennington County, to understand everything going on. And south of us, they're having a little bit of a tougher time, but I think they're starting to move in the right direction, to actually, create a new district. I think from our districts though, one thing I'd just note is, we did a lot of work. It's happening. There was the people who hated Act 46 sort of started to recede, somewhat, and they were accepting the fact that we're moving forward. We've actually had our first little hiccup with pre-K that's going to be discussed later, and that was a rallying call for, see how awful Act 46 was, and so some of those people coming out again from from having gone into the woodwork. So I think from our perspective, to the extent that you'd add. We're all going to have hiccups in our process of pulling everything together, and when you do, that brings out this was a horrible idea, and that's why this is happening. And to the extent that it's turned into a squishy thing, that's going to actually I think create an issue for us. And in a smoothly merging district, I think we're going to end up having having a harder time if people see that they can actually get some traction with a single issue problem.
Okay, I'm gonna skip Susan. The staff is,
Nicole speaks for
they
her.
don't need to take an opinion because no matter what they say, it'll be wrong. Linda?
I guess, I thought, my perspective was that we as a group of people at the VSBA supporting the law or not supporting the law? So as a newbie, I always go back to the mission, and the goals from the beginning. But I'm a law-abiding person, and you gotta work within the law. You gotta work within your boards, you gotta work with the community, you gotta work with the kids. So, but I think, I look at some of them as a special educator, that maybe some of the people are like special ed kids who don't learn at the same rate as everybody else. So it takes them a little longer to figure out what is going on. So that's how I'm looking at it. I think it's up to the state. They made the law. That this ain't my, this is, you gotta stand by what you and the group of people decided to make this law. And I think if you're gonna testify, you go back to your vision, your mission, and your goals, and you say, you know what, we're here to support all of them. Every school board person through the student, because that's where we are, is through the student. And if you testify, you go back to this and say, you know, you're asking me to say bad, 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 you guys aren't doing what you're supposed to be doing. And I don't think that's what it's about. They're having problems dealing with it. How do we as a board support the people who want to defy the law? I don't think that's our responsibility. They made the law. The Senate and the representatives made the law. You guys stand by it. We'll support the boards as best we can, even the ones that are having a hard time coming along. We don't want to create a civil war in Vermont by the boards. It's not north and south against each other. It's how do we support you? This is the law. We want to support you. I did Act 46. We're all together. I'm not exactly ecstatic with it, but I'm working my way through it. How do we support you guys? This is the law. How do we support you? That's my feeling. Go back to your mission and vision.
Just so I've put the mission and vision up on the board, so you have it.
So, since it's there, one of the things that we do here at the VSBA is, our big charge is good governance. And I keep thinking, where does H39 fit into good governance? And I can't figure that one out. By giving a delay, and I don't know where Baruth is coming off, he doesn't want to talk about Act 46 issues anymore. Give him a delay, and they'll ensure that he'll talk about it again next year. It's a done deal. It's not going away. So if that's what we're not an organization that is about promoting school boards. We promote good governance. So it's not, we don't protect school boards. That's not what we do. We help them do their jobs. So and it's also apparent to me, given that I'm on the executive committee and was privy to some of these conversations, that our current stance is not working. It is putting us in a world of hurt. Because no matter what we try to say, what other kind of compromise we're trying to come up with, we get it thrown back at us every time. So I think we need to take a stance on this. We need to take the stance that's right. It's not going away, so we need to do something.
Okay,
I supported Act 46 4 years ago in Johnson when we all merged, and Cambridge won't like me saying that. I sent a letter to Nicole. That letter was widely distributed with the state government folks. They created the law. School boards did not. So if you're still down there in Montpelier and you created the law, you get a little bit of resistance. Too bad, you created it. So either go in there and fix it so that it works for everyone, or back up what you created and have a backbone about it and make it work. We have Cambridge that didn't join for the third time. If they don't change the law, welcome aboard in July. We're still graduating students. Those students are still coming out of their elementary school. Like the VSBA, we sit there and look at the students. When I go in and talk to the kids, you're our future. So, you know, as far as my position on it, I still support it. I want Montpelier to have some backbone, and don't delay it. Because if you're going to delay it, you may end up with schools that were on the border. They may join in a brand new lawsuit and try to get out of it. And what will that do? That'll just push the can down the road further. And where are we at then?
okay,
So.
Diane?
Couple of things. One, when you put up that letter from the constituent, the first one, I was shocked that it was the same language I've been hearing for 5 years. And I'm shocked at the ignorance and the fact that it's so easy to say, kids will be hurt, the sky will fall. Well, where are the letters coming from all of those who merged, who are doing fine, and no children were harmed in the filming of Act 46? I mean, come on. So that I had to laugh, and then I was shocked. I don't think we're gonna get through to those folks. The people who are playing with kids' education are those school board members. It's not the law. The question you have is, should you testify? I believe that is one of the things you wanted to know about, is what is our will for testifying and what is your position? Just want to be clear about how I'm answering that, because I agree with what everybody else is saying and the struggles and all. I would not want to see you refuse to testify because of that pressure. I think it would look sort of bad for our membership if you testify and say, by the way, they're so schizo, they don't know which way they're going. I'm representing a group of people who, you know, have all of these disparate views. So I think that what you testify, what you say, needs to be clear, and I agree with the idea of going back to our mission and our vision, and of reminding the legislature of their duty at this point to get her done. Doesn't help my personal situation, you already know that. Right. Huntington's suing us, and that's another long story.
There's a lot of things in my life that I really land in the gray area, not on the black or the white side, and I feel like there's some pieces about this that make me still fall in the gray area. I went through 2 study committees with the towns in my SU, and so we've spent a lot of time studying and going through this and working together, and I agree with a lot of what Kim has said when we first started talking about this. And I stood in front of all of my community members and said that we have to follow the law and that we need to do this, and so my folks live in Cambridge, and so when I just talked to my dad the other night, and I said, I don't like being made an idiot. When I'm being made to look a fool in front of my whole community and surrounding communities. One of the things that we talked a lot about during our study committee is that for some reason, and I think this might be particularly in the state of Vermont, but we get really attached to our sort of school and school buildings, but yet, a few summers ago, there was a really tragic ATV accident on the road that I live in, and there were kids in surrounding towns that were terribly injured, and one kid passed away. And the communities of those towns came together to support those families. And so we used that example a lot when we went through the study committee, that it isn't, we only care about the kids in this town, and I don't care about your kids over there. We need to learn to educate, to support these kids in our community, which may be a large portion of Franklin County, but really Vermont is not that big of a state. It's really educating the kids in the entire community of the state of Vermont. So I lean a lot towards I stood in front of my friends and family and I said this is the right thing to do and let's just get on with it. Because I sit on a board of 2 towns that have voted to merge and 2 towns that were forced in. And we've been treading water and it sucks. And so there's a big part of me that wants to move, like, let's get some work done and let's move forward. But I do, there's one town that's fighting tooth and nail. And there's another town that's like, holy mackerel, we didn't see this coming. And so there's a little part of me that thinks, well, those guys might need a little extra time to get accustomed to this idea because they didn't go through a study committee. They had no idea, they were totally blindsided that anything was gonna happen to them. So I feel for those folks, but having already started to lay some groundwork with them in the fall, they realize that we are not a nefarious board. We're not a big bunch of evil people that are coming in to take over their school or their school building or their teachers. So I'm still in the gray area.
Okay. Well,
I don't even know where to start because I have too many feelings because we've been in this involved too deeply, and we were one of those districts that, or 6 districts that were supposed to be the poster child of Act 46, and it's been, it's been 3 years, multiple 6B and different committees, and I definitely was one of those people that was sure that I wanted an alternative because I knew that we hadn't had enough time to build that community trust, and we hadn't started the process early enough, we didn't do the red and all of that. But when I look at this now, and I wanted to speak directly to what Dan said, is like, I feel like, you know, all these people that had really good intentions at the beginning become the very thing that we were fighting against, so self-righteous. They have all the answers now, and if making us not go to testify, I have to back up. So originally I was okay with us not testifying because we were waiting for the injunction and have the AOA testify. But now we know what, you know, the court, we're not more knowledgeable than the court. Now we know that, so we have more information. So I feel like, you know, putting out more information out there is better. It's the Senate that is gonna make up their mind. And how this has affected our communities, I don't know, Dan mentioned, you know, those people that are being elected to this boards is for a reason. But you know, it's been really heartbreaking and wrenching to hear the comments of some of these people that are now being elected to these boards, that you're supposed to, you know, as a board member or, you know, you should be the example to the next generation. You shouldn't be elected to a board, and it's more heartbreaking to see how many people voted for this particular member to join the U32 board when you're supposed to behave with integrity and courage. It doesn't matter what people tell you. And we teach this to our kids. It doesn't matter what people, it's how you react to that. And it's just, that's not who we are, and it's totally out of, our communities, as much as I wanted an attorney, we lost. We lost, we did not get the alternative. This is the law. Our job is to have a budget for our kids and let us continue the job. Our meeting was stable. I couldn't even get from these two lawyers that are, one not lawyer anymore, one used to be at the Attorney General's office, you know, like really, I had to get a 3/4 majority to let the lawyers speak, because we wanted to know what the harm would be for our district. We couldn't even get our lawyer to speak at our lawyer that we had hired, that we were paying to be at this meeting. He couldn't even speak at the meeting until we spoke once, because we needed to vote every time for get 3/4 majority, because it was our town meeting. It's just not, it's not functional anymore. And what we, at least myself and some other people are getting, you know, burned down to, we're losing some of our board members. I want to get back to the good work that we were doing before, you know, like we were doing a lot in multi-tier supports. There's a lot of really good work. That's the work that I want to continue to do. Right now we have our quality committee in hold. We have all of this other committees in hold because we don't have, our transitional boards don't even have any. We did sort them in because we separated the meeting, so we were able to organize as a transitional board, but we had no authority because the meeting was stable. So now we have a meeting coming up, and we don't want that meeting table. As hard as it's gonna be to get this timeline done, we need to move on.
Okay, Gaston?
Yeah, a few things. First of all, Nicole, when I looked at the last email, the first thing I looked at was where it came from, not the name, and it was ncsu.org, which is North Country Supervisory Union, which is what my school is a part of as a school district. Montgomery is not a part of that SU. And so I sort of object to this email being sent under that email address, because it somewhat appears, right, that is coming at least from the NCSU, and I am not aware of any campaign from the NCSU to do this. And I think that's okay, so right off. And so not getting off of that, I do have to say that I would love to help, but I don't know how, because it appears like it's almost going to be like walking into a hornet's nest and not knowing what's going on. One of the things that my board, NCSU-wide, asks are VSBA updates. I think that perhaps if we're in a position now where we really need to, okay, everybody take a deep breath, let's really think about this, that we need to have somewhat of a message, if you will, so that we can take that back, not only to our local boards, but to our supervisory or unified board, whatever. And then I can then take that to other board or other districts that I don't even know, you know what I mean? There perhaps needs to be a plan with all of us going forward to help you. That's kind of where I'm coming from with that. Now, in terms of this, you know, us versus them, it's the law, meet it, I do want to point out a couple of things. Number one is that it seems that it's a very different proposition if you took the time, right, and you had time to, you know, go before the borders and have these discussions and, you know, and you work through these issues and all is good. Great. Remember too though, as I understand it, the law allowed the state to not publish its final plan until when? Go live by when? You know, and you're facing all of these issues that are coming at you. I just see those two things as apples and oranges. I really honestly do. And the notion that because you formed a study committee and moved forward and you did all of that work, that's great. But remember, there was this whole thing called alternative governance as well. And there was a whole lot of work that went into that as well. And so for me, I just think they're just different. They're just different. And the issues are magnified. When the state says, do it, that's very different. And that's what I think part of the issue is. Last month, I didn't get my point across, but I want to read from this report, okay, the very last statement. Our associations are concerned that the Agency of Education may not be performing its essential functions and call upon the General Assembly. What I was trying to get at last month was that if you go forward and you say, okay, 1 July, you're live, it seems to me that if the Agency of Education, and I'm not exactly sure what they need to do to plug into all of this, then they need to be stood up and made absolute certain that those districts having problems, that the AOE can then support them. Because I'm not really getting a feeling that they can or are. Is that fair?
I would say their governance team is probably the highest functioning team.
Oh, good.
at the moment.
Good.
They have not
Good to
lost
hear.
anybody.
Let me see, lastly. I think you need to testify. I just think that it would be very wrong not to. And I just think that however we move forward, that we have to be a part of all of this. And, you know, again, it's not just you, but I mean, you know, if there are nuances or what have you, but if we let all of this fester and we're not, you know, making an effort to be there and just to say, okay, then I don't know.
We gotta get this, because supper's awaiting, I know
Oh
it is.
gosh, thanks for the stress there.
But we're going to keep going, we aren't gonna
It's
stop for
vegetarian,
supper.
Clarence, you won't miss it.
Oh, but I will, oh, it's gotta give me a hard time. Go ahead.
Sorry. So I thank you, Gaston, for pointing out that in Wyndham Southeast Supervisory Union, we did the work. I attended personally 50 study committee meetings and 25 AGS committee meetings and probably like 20 forums to discuss with the public. I created a survey to get the information. I did so much work. This is like, my kids made an AGS star and an Act 46 star for the Christmas tree 4 years in a row. That's how much work I did. So I really want to be clear that people have been doing work on this all along. Unfortunately, our
our articles of agreement were rejected by 71% of the voters, not even close. And 84% of the voters in Dummerston, but 71% of the voters. And it was a high turnout vote. So we know we have a piece of stinking crud for our voters, and that's how they feel about a merger. And so where the House bill originally said, oh, you've started the process, you're ahead of the game. No, I just know what not to do. I know what my voters don't want. I also would like to point out that people, I don't know of a school board member on either side of this issue that doesn't have the kids front and center, really. There are people in the community that may feel that, but in Wyndham Southeast Supervisory Union, we are laser focused on our children, and we are continuing to do this work. We are introducing pre-K this year. We are taping our meetings to increase transparency. We are keeping our tax rate level. We are working towards the goals because that's what the alternative governance structure had us do. We have accomplished, I think, 9 of the 11 goals that our study committee set out for programming equity as an SU. And that's, so I just want to be clear that we're not sitting there saying, oh, kids go to the wind, I want to keep my town meeting. This has not been our process. And I hope, Flora, that I am.
That's not good.
No, I hope that
We've been doing work too.
No, I hope that I am not speaking in a way that is not in a leadership or behaving in a way, because I think we've all really tried to do this in our corner. I only can speak about Wyndham Southeast Supervisory Union. We are also, we were told we were the poster child too. I forget who else, but we were told we were the poster child as well. So when we got a 71% rejection, that was difficult. So now we're faced with a very short time frame to implement. And we have a tricky situation. Brattleboro taxes are going to go up a lot, and they're the least able to pay. So if we have to implement this in 3 months and come up with a budget, the taxpayers of Brattleboro that have the least ability to pay are going to have a tax increase if we just combine these budgets together and come out with a tax rate. And they voted it down as well. And there isn't time to come up with savings that are going to affect the large, they're more than half of the town, the population of our district, of our future merged district. So there isn't time to come up with $500,000 worth of savings in these 3 months. I would like to take the time to find that, to keep their tax bill level. And really, we have one audit and, cutting people's salaries. I also think we need to look for people to run for the boards because it's such an unpopular, and everybody's burned out. So, and it's a full-time job to implement this in 3 months and then get it going. It's a lot for the next year. I would think about doing it for the next year, but 3 months, like, whew, that's a lot. And it's gonna be unpopular no matter what we do. So, you didn't stay for my testimony, nor Woodbury, and I don't fault you, you had a meeting to get to.
Yeah.
But the last 2 that were actually school board members testifying today were both saying, we need the time just to get the work done. And we need to make sure the kids are focused and that we are making sure that the Brattleboro tax base is kept whole. That's what my testimony consisted of. And I want to do right by my taxpayers, by my children. That's all I ever come to the meetings to do. And try not to get in trouble. I'd also like to apologize to Nicole. I have not checked my emails. If anybody emailed me today, I was trying to very quickly write testimony today. So if any came from my district, I will surely write them and ask them to send a note with a better tone and retract what they said. But I don't know. I haven't even
I don't know that
checked,
you've
so
been copied on much. I think maybe you and Dan were copied on a couple.
I got a call at 9 o'clock, can you come testify? So I had to drive 2 hours up and write testimony.
I have one question for you. You said Brattleboro's rate's gonna go up appreciably. I don't know, and under the forced merger rules, whether the 5% up or down rule still applies on tax rates?
Should.
5% increase on their tax rates.
But you're capped at 5%.
Capped at 5%, but,
Would be a sizable increase, but it's not way out of whack. It's gonna be cushioned over the years. When you say.
I would say that if I had a $1.60 tax rate and then courtesy of the merger that I don't want, I had a $1.66 tax rate and it's been pretty level around $1.60 in Brattleboro for a long time, I think that would not be popular with Brattleboro voters. I mean, that would be my intent, would be to try to find those savings in the first year. Because all we've heard about is the savings. We don't have the incentives, we don't have the in our district, people kept talking about, oh, all these savings, all these savings, all these savings, that's what the study committee kept saying, so. Yeah, so we're kind of starting at a deficit to try to find these millions of dollars worth of savings that they've been, yes.
Okay.
So,
Louis?
I'll be very quick. The one comment that I think it was Gio made, might have been Mark, about community members rethinking the actions we've already taken as a result of the traction some of this delay conversation is getting, is happening, and it's a little terrifying to think that if we don't take a position, I do think you'll see other communities starting to jump on this lawsuit and trying to back out of mergers that they've already joined. And so I do think we need to take a position. It needs to be that we don't delay and we find supports for the communities that need it to get this done.
Okay. Tom?
Oh, okay, I told you he'd do it. First of all, I want to say that.
I didn't want you to go first because you might fall asleep on me before we got around the rest of the week. You're wide awake, but
I know that my message is not going to change.
you're mad at me, so that's good.
I think the big thing in my mind is you do have to testify. As a former chair of that committee, I think somebody opts out not to testify is going to lose a lot of credibility the next time around. Because there are going to be other issues. This is only a battle. There's still wars that are about to go on, so I think you have to. I think it's really interesting, some of the dynamics that this has brought along since I started with this like 6 years ago. But one of them, I think the alternative governance option probably was a mistake. I think it built a lot of false expectations. I don't know anybody that made it, but I mean, we had so many meetings with so many good ideas of things we had done that not everybody knew and things we were going to do. So there was this expectation that, wow, we've shifted into high gear, so how can anybody say that they know? You know, they might say, you need to refine it or work, but to just say, no, it's junk. That's what people understood. It started really getting people angry and bitter that they had given more time on that than as a regular school board job. They really have. I would say that the whole idea of a delay in our district could make a difference. And I say that because what I have found in the last, maybe 2 months, that people who had cared less whether we had a merger or not in Swanton, one of the biggest towns, and kind of looked at Franklin and Highgate as, they like to fight over everything anyway, so we'll go with it. And so I think people are becoming more educated in why a merger is going to have to happen. The biggest complaint I heard, I worked the polls, is town meeting day in March is the day that we talk about our schools, our school budgets, our roads and everything. And this whole damn merger thing that's going to make it in May or June when kids are playing Little League. So the advantage I see if we did a delay in our district, that we're getting people who probably work against it to buy in and start speaking for it, number one. And number two, it gives us time to get into that cycle so we get to a positive point. I think one of the saddest things in our district is that Sheldon, who has been in that supervisory union for many, many years, and sends all of their students pretty much, high school, well, no, not pretty much. They go to Enosburg, they go to MVU, and they go to BFA. Nothing against Bakersfield, wonderful little community, but people in Sheldon, many of them don't even know what Bakersfield is. If they do, they don't know that. So I think the state really made some blunders on some of those things. And some of the people in my town, in Swanton, they're not angry about Swanton merging. They're angry that their relatives in Sheldon have now got to join a school district in Berkshire.
Yeah, none of our towns have any similar borders. None of them
It'd
connect.
be like Montpelier going with Randolph, White River, and Newport. That's just about basic. So anyway, you need to testify, and I think the big message that I would want to leave is no tinkering with the law. If you delay it, there has to be a commitment that those people have to be there next year, and if they aren't, there have to be some kind of penalties. So, anyway, thank you, parents.
So everybody's had a say, had to say, we're late for supper, I assume supper's here. We'll take a break, we'll have lunch, we'll come back and we'll have to formulate some kind of a motion that gives Nicole what her marching orders are from this board. It's only fair to her that whatever we want her to do as a board is collectively that we can vote on, and the majority will rule on which way it's, whatever it is when we get to it. And when we leave here at 8 o'clock, we're all still gonna be friends. We're all gonna be associates and board members too, still. All right, so I assume supper's here?
Yes.
Go ahead and eat, please. Representing the Bennington region, I can't even think of her name now. Laura Lee resigned, and this has been David's adequate replacement, and we're glad he's came to look at us, and to that end, I would like to entertain a motion to appoint him to the board to fill Laura Lee's position.
So moved.
So moved by Jim and seconded by Amy to appoint David to the board.
So Amy, you talked with him at lunch?
What?
No red flags went off, Amy?
Is, and under discussion, we'll let David.
That's right.
Yeah, they only want me here because of tornado.
We'll let David introduce himself to us and tell us a little bit about himself so the board members can know something. So go ahead, David, before we vote.
Okay, so David Chandler, I live in Dorset and been on the Dorset School Board and now the Taconican Green for probably 12 years collectively, and had the privilege of being the chair of the board during the last 10 years. So it was a great experience to watch teams grow and keep their priorities straight in what they're accomplishing. So Jim and I had always worked well together in that situation, and I know he wanted me to, he was hoping that I would get engaged because the two of us together, we come at things very differently, but we kind of end up heading in the right direction. So it's very useful. And I see that dynamic already in listening to everybody's perspectives, that it seems like we're keeping the right priorities, but at the same time recognizing there are a wide range of perspectives. So I feel at home, so thank you very much.
Okay. Any further discussion or questions for David? Not all those in favor of appointing the board, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried, so declare it. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome, welcome.
Now we'll go back to where we started on the subject of testifying and the delay and what everybody's talking about. Nicole needs direct guidance on what we're going to do with Gio says he has a motion he'd like to offer.
I have a motion that the VSBA recognizes that this is a challenging time for boards and our membership is divided on this issue. Our mission and vision statements require us to support policies that promote good governance. Prolonging the uncertainty surrounding Act 46/49 will have a detrimental effect on students and employees. Therefore, we oppose delay. We support default budgets. The legislature should decide, if the legislature should decide on delay, the legislature should decide on delay, not individual districts. And if there is a delay, the legislature should reaffirm the SBE plan.
SBE?
State Board of Education.
State Board of Education plan, okay. Now, can you email that to Gary or somebody so we can put that up on the
I can get it to Nicole. Well, do we need a second on that, right?
Yes. Is there a second to that motion?
Could you read it one more time?
I do need it one more time, I agree.
Well, why don't we put it up so people can see what they're seconding? Because if it gets a second, we can always take it down. It would be nice if...
Excuse me,
Yeah.
Carrie, is there any way the people on the web can see it? I know you all can see it, but I...
You'd like it put on the website too? Is that what you just
Yeah,
asked?
she wants to be able to see it on here, and I don't know.
Can you type it out?
Email it to them? Email it to us, Carrie?
You email I am not at my computer.
I will email it to people who are on the phone once I have it typed. First I have to type it.
Okay, Nicole's gonna type it and then email it to you all. Dan, Kim, and Lori, and Adrian, I think, is on the
Everybody finish up the
other one.
Why don't you share, because Neil was not able to join us. Neil was not able to join us, and he did had a point of view. Can you share that?
Oh.
Because he was not able to be here.
Yes, spoke with Neil on the phone, I should have told you that before. All right, while we're waiting for the motion to get typed up here, the vice president couldn't be here tonight, he's chairing his own school board meeting in either New Hampshire or Vermont someplace, that he couldn't get another date. He thought the directions for Nicole should be definite. We needed to take a stand one way or the other, and it needs to be definite that he wanted to convey that image to the board that he wasn't, that was his point of view. And I wanted to bring that out, but I didn't want to do it first to set the agenda. I wanted to set the agenda by everybody else. And David, if you'd like to add anything to the conversation while we're waiting for this motion, I allow you to, because I didn't call on you before.
Well, I did have some thoughts and comments, but they're really not that much different from everyone else. It sounds like there's a sense that some people are resisting just for the sake of resisting, but that there are a lot of people that are really struggling and trying to grapple with the issue. And I don't know how you separate those two groups. The other question I had was, what are the teeth? What happens if people just drag on interminably? Is there anything in the law that kicks in, and at what point does that happen?
Well, as it is right now, unless something is passed by the legislature, the State Board of Education ruled, and the agency says, get it done, or else there are consequences that they take care of it. The lawsuit does, it is pending, so you can never depend on what the court's going to do, but until the court does something, the law stands as it is. And actually, without getting into too much opinion here, I'll leave all alone. The motion is up there on the board for people to see, and to get a second, we will email it. Can we email?
I did already emailed it.
Emailed it to the people that are online so they get to see it also. All right?
Okay, all the go-to meeting people, Nicole emailed it to you. Let us know if you do not get it.
I got it, this is Dan.
Okay?
Clarence?
Yeah.
I will second that motion.
All right, motion's been made and seconded. Gio made it, Leo seconded it, Lewis. Leo.
So close, Clarence.
I'm an honorary kingdom person, you know, so I get things all screwed up.
Excuse me.
I knew we'd get a rise out of that. Therefore, it is, now it's open for discussion.
Hi, this is Adrian. I didn't get it by email.
Oh, Adrian.
Yeah, I finally showed up. I was all by myself in that little conference call for the first hour.
Oh, I see we got some emails here. Sorry.
That's okay.
There you go, Adrian. It should come in
Thank
your
you.
way.
Should have it there. Everybody's already had their say. No one who wants to discuss the motion, pro or con?
John.
All right, Clarence.
Yes, I'm sorry.
I'm not on the first time. Therefore, I would strike the way, I'd rearrange that, I'd strike something, but I would put, the legislature, the legislature created this. I mean, so if you want to use that language, the legislature should decide on delay, not individual school districts. To me, that's the number one issue. They created this whole situation through a number of decisions, and now it's kind of like, oh, Somebody else needs to solve it. It's their solution. So if I was listening to their voice, I would put that one number one.
I have no problem with that.
I would strike, we oppose delay, because I just think that's gonna fuel the fire. I grew up in a farm family where we had a saying, don't get in the trough with the hogs. And I think that this is just gonna fuel the fire, but that's all right. But for my way of thinking this most strong statement we can make is, we don't want the bill to change. The merger and all of the stuff that goes on, whether it happens this year or next year, should not be tinkered with, should not be changed, should not be amended, should not be waived, whatever. But definitely the big thing when I saw that is to not start out with we oppose to the way. Because why should we oppose something that, why should we solve something that we didn't create? And I think that's getting us into it, but that's my opinion.
Okay, so you've made a suggestion.
I would go with number 3 first and number 4 next.
3, 4, 2, and skip 1, that's your amendment?
3, 4, 2.
All right, is there a second to that amendment?
I'll second.
You'll second that amendment to change this to
That was Gaston?
3, 4, 2,
3, 4, 2.
and no 1. Rearrange those 3 lines.
Probably in 3, and I gotta be careful. I like it, the legislature should decide on delay, but I might have added, and maybe you won't do that, it's their legislation, it's their creation, but maybe we don't need to say that. Maybe they're smart enough to figure that out.
Okay?
And if
Now-
not, we shouldn't.
Now, we're speaking just of the, now we're going to debate this amendment to the motion. All right, so I'll speak to it. Gio?
So I think if we strike the first one, I don't care about the order. That doesn't, I'm fine with putting 4 first or 3 first. That doesn't bother me at all. But I think if we strike the first one, we're exactly in the same place that we are right now.
No, because you've got right up there, to prolong the uncertainty regarding 4630 will have a detrimental effect on students and employees. I think they should be able to read that.
Yeah, but I think it's a very strong statement to say we oppose the delay. And I think it's been very clear to me with my involvement, watching, these letters all came into my inbox today too, because they were writing the executive committee as well and saying, can you believe that your executive director is growing rogue on you, aren't you gonna rein her in, type of thing. When we try to do a middle of the line, more middle of the line effect, it didn't work. They came back at us anyway. And you saw the nature of some of the letters, and Dan said it too. I wouldn't call them nasty, but they were
close to.
Yeah, they were pushing the boundary there. So I really think we need to have that's the most important part, number 1.
So you're in opposition to the
Correct.
amendment?
I'm in opposition to this amendment.
Having been to 3 meetings and listened to Nicole speak rather eloquently, I think somewhere in there, that delay has to be a piece of it. I mean, they've got a bill sitting here which says July 1st or a year extension. Whatever they do with that, they need to put some teeth behind it and make it happen, rather than like it was described in Johnson one day. I went down and talked to one of the business owners, and he said, yeah, he says they came through here with a stick, but really wasn't a stick. So I agree with Gio that somehow that number 1, however you want to word it, needs to have boundaries on it.
Okay?
And I guess I would reiterate that. I think number 1 does force us, is a position that we will take, and it takes away every other school district that's opposing this legislation. Takes away their ability to read into the rest of it as much as they want to find the message they're trying to grab from it. And I think, like you said, number 1 is certainly the most important part of this one from my perspective.
Okay, any other discussion on the amendment?
So I wonder what the downstream effects of that statement will be on your membership and whether that matters or not. I said last month that, it was very clear that the VSBA position right from the get-go, and that's fine, was pro, the preferred governance model. But still, within the law, there was the alternative governance. And that alternative governance, I don't think, has been given its due consideration. Thank you. And so to me, I just think that, we oppose delay on top of supporting, the preferred governance model. I think that's just really, I don't know.
Okay,
Not good.
you can't go again till we.
We have discussed this Act 46 when it was H 88, and this group of people, there were some different faces around the table, but we actually wrote the introduction to that law because the legislature forgot one little part of restructuring education governance, and that was students. They said nothing about our students or about the outcomes or about any of that. And this board said, if you're gonna write this law, could you make sure we know who we're talking about? The other is, this is a board, and so I am probably one of the strongest opponents to Act 46, even though it looks like it's working in my neck of the woods, and it's amazing that we work so hard and we're able to get it done. That doesn't mean that we all sing Kumbaya after every meeting by any stretch. The point for me is, it gets very difficult when the people I represent say, we don't support statewide negotiation of contracts. We don't support Act 46. As a member of this board, I vote, I say my nay and I say my yay, taking into consideration the representation of the people that elected me to this office. But then when all is said and done, and we walk out that door, besides walking out friends, we walk out in agreement. I have no problem going back to them and saying, there was a lot of discussion, but the board, by the majority, this is what was decided by the board, and that's what we're doing. This is a law. We don't have the right as a citizen to say, I think I should be able to break into your store and take whatever I want, because you know what, I deserve it. We can't do that, that's stealing. This is a law, Act 46, and this board can't, if you think about it, say, you know what? Let's vote to have people in this state disregard the law. And so I really struggle with this, because I'm an opponent. I'm no longer on a board, because this isn't what I signed up for. But the reality is, we need to take a stand. We need to be the adults that we are and get our work done or get out of the way. Lead, follow, or get out of the way.
Okay. Anyone else speak to the amendment?
Could you read the mission again, the one that you've got?
Hey, Dan, hang on just a second, I'll tell Clarence you're ready. But someone else is talking right now. So Dan's ready to talk whenever you get a chance.
So, we have a few different elements. Our articles of incorporation, which is our foundational documents, say that this organization was established for three purposes: to promote and stimulate interest in education, cooperate with other organized education groups, and assist school directors in promoting better educational opportunities for the children of Vermont. That's what we were founded to do. Our mission and vision have been tweaked over time, but this is the vision and mission we have now that's in the bylaws. The VSBA envisions a state where every student has access to and is engaged in a world-class education, where local boards provide student-focused oversight of education systems, and where educators, families, and communities are engaged partners ensuring that the futures of all Vermont children are driven by their aspirations, not bound by their circumstances. This is our mission statement, the VSBA works to achieve our vision for public education by supporting local and supervisory union boards to be effective trustees.
So the all isn't in there?
No.
Okay, that was my thing.
Effective trustees for their communities and providing a strong collective voice toward enhancing the cause of public education in Vermont.
Right, because once you say you're supporting all boards, then I think you have to, you'll get somebody who'll say, well, how are you supporting me then? If you're supporting all. I disagree with this, how are you going to support me in this? And by taking the all off, I think that's a really good idea. Because you
Okay.
can't always support all boards because of things like this.
All right, so we're still speaking the amendment. Dan?
Yes, if I could, I'd like to speak in favor of the amendment. I think that it maybe goes back to the part of Gio's motion, which states that long this will have a detrimental effect on students and employees. I'm not sure that that's not just a subjective stance. Some people may feel that. I'm not sure everybody does. But I support the amendment because I think so many districts are having different problems with this. You know, Gaston and Christina have both pointed out how hard some districts worked on their Section 9 proposals, AGSs, only to find out at the end of November that they weren't going to be accepted. So they really are under a time crunch, unexpected, and when they put their blood, sweat, and tears into the alternative governments. So I would support the amendment to simply remove that explosive language, I think, the opposed delay.
Okay. They're speaking to the amendment again.
So I think we have to leave where we oppose delay, and some, even as much as I hated that for 6 at the beginning too, we have to leave it because otherwise we leave Nicole hanging, you know. So she can speak more to why is that we're opposed to delay, but if you go back to what they say in Act 4, one of the things of the intent of the law that they put in there says Act 49 reemphasizes this point by nothing in this act should be interpreted to suggest that it is acceptable for a school district to fail to take reasonable and robust action to seek to meet the goals of Act 46. So they're not giving us any extra time. They're not disappearing at 49 or at 46 from.
They are giving us extra time.
Well, they're giving us extra time, but you're still in that same timeline to not too close. For example, we've been talking, like I said, so for me and you, we already have those defaults. So it's really important to me, the default, we support the default budgets should be what, like, really big. You know, because that is what most, our teachers, you know, all our us school board members, we feel, you know, I feel like I've let down the principals and the teachers right now, because they, you know, we have to give them like a temporary contract, really, or take the risk. So that should be, for sure, first, but then we gotta send Nicole sort of protected by us, if we really mean it.
Okay, so we have the discussion on the amendment that's rearranged it and leaves number 1 out.
We got somebody else coming in on the phone.
Sorry, it's Kim.
Who's that?
Kim.
Kim, okay.
Although I appreciate the sentiment of adding the fact that it's the legislature that created the law, and that whether we say it, we oppose delay, or we support the law in its current timeline, I don't know if that's less offensive to people. I don't think we leave it ambiguous for Nicole. I don't think that that's what we've been saying as we've been discussing it. And as a point of order, I wonder if it's possible, if this, after this amendment gets either voted or not voted, if, this may not be a thing, I'm not sure. I know that you know better than I, Clarence, but like, as we're discussing ideas, do they have to be formal amendments immediately so that that shuts down the broader conversation, or I just don't know how that process goes.
Somebody needs to tell me what she asked for, the point of order.
I think what she's asking for is, do we have the ability to tweak this without making it a formal motion?
She's got a better idea.
You know?
I understand we've got to deal with this amendment, but I think that we heard a suggestion that quickly became an amendment, and I just didn't know if every part of the conversation is going to go that way, or if she intended that it immediately became an amendment, or future suggestions are to become amendments.
The long and short of the amendment to this is say we rearrange what's there and we drop number one. If you want to drop number one and rearrange the others, vote yes on the amendment. If you don't want to do that, vote no. It's that simple. If there are any other discussion or points of view on the amendment, have I stated it clearly for everyone?
She said, Kim, if I heard you right, you said making it that we support, instead of saying we oppose delay, we support the legislature's timeline, the existing timeline.
Well, that's possible, but we need to get this amendment off the floor one way or the other. It needs to be incorporated in the motion, or it needs to go away. One or the other, so.
I think that's what Kim was asking, is if you have any other adjustments that you want to propose, does each suggestion have to become its own amendment?
Should be, because this should be very definite and clear, and tomorrow it shouldn't be up for interpretation. Because tomorrow somebody's going to testify one way or the other about this, most probably. So let's make it definite on what's going to happen. So, anyone else have any discussion?
Can I answer Gaston's question?
You can answer the chair and Gaston can listen. That's kind of how it goes.
So the Gaston was curious, Mr. Chair, if anybody's thought about the effect on membership of this, and I have, and it disturbs me that we might lose members over this. That does disturb me. However, it's very clear to me on our current track, we're losing those members anyway. By the nature of those emails we received, they're hopping mad anyway, no matter what we do. If they're gonna go, they're gonna go. So I am upset about the thought of losing them, but we need to do the right thing.
Okay? Anyone else? That was second, so, yes.
I would like to speak to the chair about.
No, I was just.
I'm teasing you, Gav. I'm teasing you. Don't worry.
Okay. Go ahead.
In my district, though, we're a district that there's a lot of mixed feelings about what to do with the VSBA, and I've spoken very strongly about all the good things the VSBA does. We've had a change in membership, but I'm not sure it's a given. And I think people were very heartened by the. And I got a lot of good emails actually, like, oh, this is great that you're supporting our school board too, and I think that was all school boards. So I wouldn't say we're gone. I wouldn't tell the chair that WSDSU is not going to pay their dues, but it is a contentious issue, and this will not help. This will not help the pig getting in with the pigs. So.
I would say I believe we realize that, but we realize that that's a possibility, as Gio said. Anyone else? Gio went a second time. If anybody else feels compelled they want to speak, again, I'll allow it. If not, I'm calling the question on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment to rearrange 2, 3, and 4 and drop number 1. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
We'll go back. I won't declare that. I'd like a show of hands. All those in favor of it. How many on the line are in favor of the amendment?
Adrian is in favor.
8 is 1.
Dan?
And Dan is 2. All right. All the rest of those in favor raise their hands. 3, 4, 5, 6. All right. Down hands. Those opposed. 3, 6, 9, 10 plus whoever's online.
Kim opposes.
11. Lori.
Child.
I abstain.
Lori abstains.
Lori abstains, okay.
And
Uh, The motion's lost, or the amendment is lost, and I so declare. All right, now we're back to the main motion again. That's the motion before you. If there's not another amendment, we will move forward with discussion on the motion. Yes, Don?
I would like to ask Kim if she had an amendment she wishes to propose. I wish that I'd heard her suggestion or question before I made my motion, on my amendment. So if she has something to put forward, I would appreciate hearing it now before we vote on the motion.
Yep. Kim?
I don't have a formal amendment to offer, and my plea of order was to question whether or not we might have discussion and see if a formal amendment comes out of it. But I appreciated your sentiment that offered it's the legislature's law, and as such, we support the current timeline as outlined in the law. And, you know, whether or not that is specific enough to be clear that we don't support delay, I don't know, and so I don't want that to be a formal amendment. What I was concerned about was that we were pretty quickly going from a discussion to an amendment, which it felt as though it sort of pigeonholes the conversation, and so I just didn't know, as a point of order, if we could have a broader conversation and then figure out if an amendment comes out of it.
Kim, I couldn't clearly understood everything you said. I'm gonna ask Gio to relate to me what you said.
I'm so sorry, I am so compromised right now, so can anybody hear me?
Yes,
Yeah, she hasn't making an amendment. She was just saying if the process could go quicker if there wasn't a formal amendment process, but you've already cleared that up. But she is suggesting, she's not making an amendment, but suggesting that we, instead of saying number one, we oppose delay, that we use wordage of some verbiage of something that the VSBA supports continuing the current timeline. You know, that the bill is on. So it softens from what my understanding is of what she's trying to say, it softens, it doesn't use that word we oppose. It's kind of a softer way of saying it.
I thought I heard her say we support the language or the bill as written, no?
The current timeline.
The current timeline.
The current timeline.
I did, and I was incorporating the comments that the legislature created the law, state the date in which the law was enacted, and indicate our continued support of the current timeline. I mean, this isn't new, and I appreciated the idea that the legislature owned this.
Let me ask you, does number 3, legislators should decide on the timeline, that statement, does that incorporate what you're trying to say, that to stick with the timeline, it doesn't say it?
If the legislature should decide on delay is like a wide, like opening up the barn doors and maybe in 2025 we're good with new delay. Number one is we oppose delay, says, I want you to do your job, do it. That's my interpretation of the difference.
Okay? Unless somebody wants to do something formally, we're going to vote on this like it is. Yes, Gaston?
2 questions or comments. The first is, what exactly will Nicole put forth as examples of solid detrimental effects on student and employees with a 12-month delay? That's number 1. Number 2, I get what your mission and vision is with support policies that promote good governance. Within that statement, what you are saying is that those alternative governance structures perhaps are not good enough, that this board has the ability to tell districts what is good and what is bad. I just don't, it's a really broad statement, and I'm not really sure, I don't know. And lastly, you know, back to, you know, follow leader, get the heck out of the way, you know, if this is about trying to get at a, you know, consensus, honestly, if you want me to get the heck out of the way, I'll get out of the way. I assure you.
You don't have to,
get
because
out
I
of the way,
have.
But it just,
Can I respond?
Yes,
Because I think it's important that
Nicole's asked to speak to this, so definitely.
so when we talk about promoting good governance, we've got a book that's about that thick. That's got nothing to do with what the structure of your board is or what type of district you have. But it's about ensuring that the district follows the law, ensuring that you have a focus on students, you have a system for holding people accountable, you have policies in place, you have budgets in place. And what we have seen over the last 6 months is school board members not ensuring those pieces are in place. So there's been active acts of civil disobedience that have been unfolding around the state with people who do not want this law to be implemented. And those acts of civil disobedience are getting to a point where they are functionally impairing the board to provide the kind of oversight it needs to provide in the district and fulfilling its fiduciary obligations. So that's how I would read it, and that's what I would talk about. In terms of a detrimental effect on students and employees, if I believed that it was just a 12-month delay and people were gonna wake up the next morning and get to work, if I believe that that's the effect it would have, I might have a different point of view, and I think that point of view might be shared by others. The fear is that we will continue to see this pattern of disruption. Meanwhile, we have Act 173, which, this board's not governing the way it needs to on certain areas because it consumed the entire meeting on Act 46. Districts around the state are consumed with whether or not they want to follow the law as it's been interpreted by the State Board of Education, the Agency of Education, and now a court. And they're not focusing on kids, and they're not getting ready to implement a massive change to the way we fund special education and deliver supports to students. So that's what I take from this motion. You're not in a preferred governance structure, so the heck with you.
Don?
So Nicole goes and testifies after we pass this motion, and a senator sits there and says, okay, your board met and they voted. Was that unanimous? You have to share with them the vote.
Well, I have to, I'll be honest with people.
See, I think we came out of the last legislative session as big losers. We put winners and losers last session. I don't think VSBA came out a winner. I think all the health insurance stuff and all the stuff we got caught up in politically. I'm just concerned about the future of this board in many ways. And Gio, I respect you a lot, but we aren't going to convince some of the people that are against us and against our decisions. But if we buy into that, that just gives them more fodder to say to other people, see, I told you, they don't listen to it. I know what's going to happen. We're going to pass this, and that's fine. And Nicole's going to be there, and we'll vote the way we want. But I just see, some of the characteristics that we criticize in others. I think we're being a little less flexible than we need to be in the long run. In the short term, we're going to win this battle. By having spent 8 years in the legislature, I think in the long run, we're going to lose this war. But end of speech, I think it's probably time to vote.
Okay.
Well, the only concern I have is we as a body are expressing an opinion to the legislature. They're the ones that are going to vote on it. So they can not agree with everything we say, but at least they'll have, and if, like I did at town meeting, I was asked a very specific question, I answered it very specifically and said, not everybody is in favor of this. And I think that's a very true statement. But
Well, I think the motion acknowledges it up front.
Our membership is divided on this issue.
Okay. Time for the question? We'll start with polling the people on the phone.
There's somebody wanting to talk.
Dan, did you want to say something?
Dan, again, if I can, Clarence, just for, yeah, please, if I could.
Yes, go ahead, Dan.
Okay, I just want to say, Nicole, you know, I apologize to you earlier for the tone of some of the letters coming to you, but I also have to say, for you to sit there and say to this board tonight that, that the people who are working within their communities not to merge, are doing so at the detriment of the students there, I guess I would take that as a slap in the face. If I were, for example, Christina, someone who has been working on this for years and years and years, I would really seriously caution you not to say that kind of thing in public, because I think that's as slanderous as some of the things that have been said to you.
Anything else, Dan?
Thanks for listening to me, I appreciate it.
What did he say?
Thanks.
Thanks for answering.
Okay,
I think, let me just throw out, kind of following up on Don's, I still think the idea of going for a 3-4, 3-4-2, and then having a final point that says that, maybe, as Gio just said, our membership is divided, but the VSBA supports the, supports the existing timeline in Act 46.
which is what opposes delay says.
Yeah, but it, as I said, it doesn't hurt to soften. That's.
Okay, Diane?
I agree, wording is meaningful to people. And I would have preferred exactly what Kim had said, is that we support the existing timelines of Act 46, as opposed to we oppose delay, because I do think that that's kind of a challenge. It's just challenging words. And I don't think we need to do that.
Will you move that?
But I think also the switching the order, having it number 1 just is like.
I don't know that it'll
That's-
matter once you change the words
Maybe.
as much. So I would make an amendment to say, we support the existing timelines of Act 46 for number 1.
All right, is there a second to that?
Second.
Second by Jim. Any discussion on the issue? Yeah.
So, I think in this case, I appreciate the idea of wanting to soften this, but I'm wondering the effect of saying so you're sitting in that Senate chamber testifying, and we're the last of 3 hours worth, and we come out with a statement that says, yeah, we support the existing timelines. I can just see it going right over everybody's head, because they have to stop and think about that. This one, I can see if we read that statement, oh, wow, that's a change of position. We're going to get some attention, because we are changing our position. So I think I prefer to keep that language, because it's more
Okay,
direct.
so you're opposed to this amendment?
I'm opposed to this.
Don?
I just want to clarify, because I think this is what I understood. If not, I would like a little discussion. That number 1 would be what Diane just said. Number 2 would be number 3. Number 4 would be 3, and then number 2 would be the last.
I didn't change any of it.
Wow.
She didn't change the order.
I didn't change the order.
She
In my
just
amendment.
changed the first one. It was the amendment.
Can I ask you a question? So if I'm in the committee and they ask me, so do you oppose delay? If you change the wording here, am I sticking to the script in terms of we support the existing timelines in Act 46?
Good question.
Or am I able to say, yes, we oppose a delay? Because
I
at
think
the
you
end of
would
the
be
day-
able to say it in that situation. And I agree that it sounds like maybe it doesn't make sense, but it's.
I have, from the beginning of this, our involvement, to Celeste's point, this board has taken action that have allowed people to interpret what it means. had unanimous votes and left the room and had some people saying it meant this and other people saying it meant that, and I write something or testify something, and the next month we're at a board meeting and people are not happy with the way I interpreted the motion. So I appreciate the sensitivity that's being brought to this, but clarity is really important.
Okay.
Can I say something, Mrs. Adrian?
Yes?
I listened to Nicole's comments, and I have to admit I find them very convincing. She needs clarity. If we can bring ourselves to say we oppose delay, if that is what we think, and personally I do, I was in a district that merged, it's not that bad. Although, current newspaper articles aside. I would vote for the original amendment, although I probably, if it were me, I would put them in a different order, but I have not wedded to that undoubtedly.
Okay.
We're now doing the amendment though, right?
Yeah, we're talking about the amendment. Jim?
Yeah, you know, I fully take you need clarity at the same time. You know, I look at it and I say, okay, two things are on the table right now from the House and the Senate. One that is you know, did you have a plan before, or didn't you have a plan? The other one, you guys decide. There could be, you know, I look at a situation like, you know, like Christina was talking about, and say, you know, maybe they can come up with some better solution that has a delay for districts that actually need it. You know, I'm kind of doubtful they can come up with anything better, but to some extent to say that, you know, you know, if they came up with something better that was, you know, that fits some of those situations that really are, you know, a good case for having a problem, that would be fine. But, you know, I think, you know, there isn't a solution right now that involves delay that is an acceptable solution. But that doesn't mean that it's impossible.
Mr. Chairman, I call for a vote on the amendment.
Vote on the amendment. The amendment was to change the wording to.
We support
We support
existing
the existing timelines of Act 46.
as a, for one.
Okay, and delete, we oppose.
Correct. That was what I had proposed.
Can you draw a line through that first?
Although I was going to remove my amendment though.
What?
When you called the question.
I don't know how to do that, but.
Okay, well, just highlight it, that's good enough, we know that's gonna be taken out if the amendment is approved. You're voting to strike the first three words and insert the next 6 or 7 there. That's the amendment before you, all those. Let's start with those online.
So Clarence, I'm not clear, because I'm not there, I'm not clear what we're voting on. So could we read the amendment again, please?
Who's that, Kim?
I think it's Lori.
Lori, it's,
Yes.
you have the amendment, you have the motion in front of you?
She doesn't.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, the email.
She does now?
Yeah, the email.
Okay, so number 1, we're deleting, we oppose delay, and inserting the words, we support the existing timelines of Act 46. That's the amendment that we're debating and voting on right now. The question's been called. All those in favor of the amendment, please signify, or people online say aye if you're opposed.
Aye.
Why, if you're opposed?
No. Aye if you're in favor of the motion,
The amendment.
of the amendment, yes.
Silence.
Anyone online?
Aye.
Dan.
Aye.
Dan is aye.
Dan and Lori.
Dan and Lori are ayes.
That's it.
Anyone here?
Is Kim on?
Yeah, I didn't hear Kim come in, but I heard Lori.
The question was,
Are you in favor of the
Kim
amendment?
was in favor of it as well.
That's 2. All right, all those in favor of the amendment?
All those what, sorry?
In
In
favor of the amendment.
amendment. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. plus 2 is 9. All right, all those opposed to the amendment? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Anyone online, Kim?
Adrian?
Adrian?
What'd you say, Kim?
I'm gonna oppose it if it's not the clarity that's necessary.
Kim says she's opposed to it.
Adrian, are you there?
I am, I'm sorry, I had you on mute and I didn't hit the right button. I am opposed to the amendment.
Great tie.
Motion to adopt the amendment is lost, tie, declare it lost. Okay, so we're back to the original language. Is the main motion. There's no further discussion. All those in favor of the motion? We need start with those online. Anyone online in favor?
Aye, this is Adrian.
Adrian is 1.
Kim?
Kim?
Yeah.
She said aye. It's 2. All right. Anyone else here in favor of it? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Down hands. Those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4.
Dan, are you opposed to the count and the opposing?
4.
Nay.
Lori?
Nay.
Nay.
Lori and Dan against.
5 and 6. All right. So it's 6. The motion is carried. So that was what? 12 to 6. If asked, that's where the board stands. It's 12 to 6. And just so there's clear from the discussion, that's all in there, that's what it is. All right, so that motion is there.
With long discussion, I think it's really important that it's clear that the board really is struggling with this, and yeah, it's 12 to 6, but it's also how long have we been talking about it, and it's been 3 votes.
Okay.
You don't have the analysis.
Another point to make is that looking at how much time we spent on one topic, and it's the same thing, this is distracting us from the work that we need to do to advance all the programs we want for kids, changing of the education finance structure, whatever else we want to do. So that's another point that we can make.
Okay. I do appreciate everyone's input for this. This has not been an easy decision or an easy discussion, and I knew it wouldn't be, but the time spent was an investment. It had to happen. We had to take a position, win, lose, or draw. All right. Yes.
One thing, first, thank you. I recognize that this is difficult, but clarity is what I needed, so thank you. And I will respond to Dan's comments later. We will be sending a message to the membership before testimony is offered, because they deserve to hear this first before the legislature does.
Okay. Therefore, now we need to, board committees, the region and strategic plan. That we were working on the regions, Did we appointed that committee, didn't we?
No, we did not, that's what we're supposed to do.
I think we need to take a 5-minute break. You know, we need to breathe, all of us, because change the air in the room or something. It's just too tense in here and it's too hot in here. And I'm sitting here freezing. 5 minutes.
We'll take 5.
I'll even set my alarm.
Do a little modification here to the agenda so we can get through this stuff. We have everything should have been done, but we're going to try to hit the high points that need to be taken care of. We're going to skip down through to number 5 and do that briefly so people are up to speed on what's going on with 173.
So just vis-a-vis committees, if you have an interest in serving on a committee that would redesign our regions, just please please let me know, and/or a strategic planning committee that would work with Susan. We just keep sort of getting to a point in the meetings where we haven't been able to act on that. So, we really need you to, help us with this, because it can't, neither of those can be a staff-led
Is that like
exercise.
once a month, or is it?
I don't know how many meetings it would take. I think in terms of the strategic plan, the idea is to develop some sort of process for us to update our strategic plan. It's done this August. And so staff wants input on what kind of process we should undertake and then recommend that to the board. So I would imagine a couple of meetings on that one. On the regions, again, probably 2-3 meetings. We're really gonna be it's in response to a resolution that was passed, calling for us to at least look at our regions after all the governance change. That's occurred to make sure they still make sense. Like some SUs no longer exist, and so it's a cleanup activity, but also there's some guidance in the resolution. So I think the goal there would be to come up with a recommendation for the summertime, for the resolutions committee. Are those in the bylaws? I think the regions are in the bylaws, so we would need to make that recommendation to the executive committee to incorporate into the bylaws changes for the coming year.
Okay,
Thank you.
so if anyone has interest in serving in those functions,
I had those that I was thinking, just to put name whichever you felt was.
You're on my
I
list.
told you, you're, okay, I'm on the list.
all right?
In a good way.
Now on to 173, number 5.
Okay, so, in your packet, I sent you the joint, testimony. Don't have a lot of time to get into it, but, I guess I'm looking for nods around the table, rather than a formal motion at this point. The Act 173 Advisory Group has essentially set a deadline for the Agency of Education of April 1st to produce for us draft rules that make sense, and a professional learning plan. And if we don't see evidence of either of those things, the advisory group is going to call for a delay of Act 173 implementation. So, I have, the concerns are laid out in the memo or in the testimony. It is, to me, like, we can't get past Act 46 fast enough because the stakes of 173 are huge and apply to everyone across the board. And the Agency of Education is not staffed to do the work at the moment. So it's really concerning in terms of moving forward on a path that has us cutting funding without having the adequate supports in place for professionals. So just sort of, is everybody comfortable with me representing at that meeting if the agency does not demonstrate actual progress on either of those tracks? We will join our colleagues in calling for a delay.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, yes.
A lot of nodding heads. Carrie, could you?
Nodding heads.
Everybody's nodding.
Yes. All heads are nodding.
Yes. I mean,
Really are.
there's yeah.
173 is just it's a disaster from the trainings we had at regional meetings that they just don't know. Nicole framed it very nicely. It's a disaster waiting to happen and then some.
But they don't seem to care. The agency should be on this.
Yeah.
Well, that's for another day.
Yes.
Another day.
All right, now we're on to universal pre-K.
So I will just give a quick setup, and again, just being mindful of time, I'm not sure what exactly Jim was looking for in terms of the board's conversation tonight, but we've been talking sort of theoretically about some of the issues with Act 166 and the challenges with how that law has been implemented and interpreted through regulation. And Jim and David's district is experiencing firsthand the limitations with the law, and it's really having a detrimental effect on what they can offer kids and dynamics of the community. So I know you're planning to have.
Well, that, the letter is, it's been slightly tweaked since then, but it's pretty close to what's in there, which hopefully just outlines for people what the, you know, some of the issues that we're having. What I'm really looking for here is, we're going to, we've got everybody in the world copied on this thing, and it's gonna go out this week. Or at a board meeting last night, we got it okayed. There's a few people wanting to tweak a few things still. Basically, you know, a big issue is we pulled together, you know, 9 towns, 7 districts, 5 schools into one new district, and we had different pre-K programs. We had one particular school that had a 5-day-a-week pre-K program. We had others that had just the 10 hours of private providers, you know, provided out there. We have to create equality across the district. Act 166 doesn't, you know, it doesn't give us any flexibility. We can't expand programs towards the bigger one. We can't, you know, we could cut everybody back to 10 hours. But we're having that district that's had for you know, for the past 6, 7, 8 years, before Act 166.
10 years.
Well, 10 years it started, but it's been, you know, so 10 years. We've, you know, they've had a great program that's been wonderful for their kids pre-Act 166, but now that we have more kids in the district, in our bigger district, we're telling those people that I'm sorry, but you're gonna be cut back to either a 4-day or a 2-day, etc. And people are going nuts, which is totally understandable. And so the thought is, some of the rest of, you know, my guess is in other new districts, SUs, some of you guys may have already run into this problem, or you may be running into it in the future. We're gonna go and try to squawk a whole lot and talk about, you know, needing an update to Act 166, and what we're looking for is company. Anybody else who is interested in discussing the issue or joining us. You know, we're perfectly happy to make the noise all on our own, and we're trying to set up.
No better group as far as I'm concerned.
And I think we're going to be able to set up a meeting with, you know, with agency, you know, with the Dan French and Al Gabelli, and you know, we can do some legislative stuff. But it always sells a little bit better if there are other districts that are facing similar issues or expect that they will face similar issues and are expecting to join, you know, that they might have an interest in joining. Just let me know. You know, that's basically it.
Okay. I have one question about pre-K that I don't want lost, and maybe I'm wrong here, but in the proposed amendment that we just dealt with and got away with, the last sentence is tucked in here, that they're going to change. It says, students enrolled in pre-K programs shall not be counted.
That's for small schools grant.
But under the small schools grant, that doesn't mean that they're trying to slip that in, that they aren't gonna count them
All forever, no.
They are?
No.
But if I could, you know, David, I think wanted to add.
Okay.
He's a key player in this.
I just wanted to add that this is one of those situations, and you all know this, but this is one of those situations where we finally get a chance to promote kids. We're here. Everybody knows that pre-K is a high return investment, and then all of a sudden we have to dumb down a program, and we have parents who are so up in arms. And it's easy to say, well, we'll bring it back to the legislature and they'll deliberate over it and they'll create a think tank study, and in 2 years we'll have an answer. And what I keep hearing from other people is, okay, so we're going to lose 2 or 3 years. Kids are going to lose 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. That's the whole idea.
Now, you might say, okay, in the big picture, that's not a big deal. But I think that's why we were all pulled together. This is what we were supposed to do, is we're supposed to create better environments, and this is living up to everybody's greatest nightmare, which is pulling everyone together will dumb down the system. So Jim has stated fairly well what we'd like, but I just want to let you know that if we don't see any other recourse, I'm actually wondering if we should talk about civil disobedience. Some kind of way to, David's not the only person writing about it. We're gonna
First
break
we
the
told
law.
for delay, now you want civil disobedience?
We're gonna break the law, right, yeah, no, I'm unpredictable, Gio. Perfectly all right.
Hey, Clarence, can I say something? This is Adrian.
Yes.
Jim, your situation was what happened at Mill River, or in the Mill River district. Tinmouth had a 5-day-a-week program. Other people had widely varying things. This year, we put to our voters that we are going to have pre-K combined with daycare, so that pre-K can be of varying levels with licensed teachers, and we will be providing daycare as a separate item because you can't combine it in your regular after-school stuff, so that all districts have 5-day-a-week programs.
And the agency.
And our voters bought
But you can't do that at the school level.
Discount, being it out there.
But you can't do it at the school level, and it's not gonna get paid for by the state.
We are doing the daycare piece for that very purpose because we can get daycare subsidies and we can ask parents for help. So we can leverage that into maybe a 5-hour program, keep the kids through lunch on a preschool basis, and then have an extended day through daycare that is hopefully going to be paid for through those subsidies and through parental fees.
Okay, I'll give you a call, Adrian, that'd be great.
You too.
Okay.
Diane?
Give me a call too,
Yeah,
our
yeah.
superintendent, and I'll hook you up with our superintendent, because we had some other creative things that we've already done that may help.
Beautiful. Okay, great.
Okay. Any more on 173? Yeah, I'm sorry, 166. So.
422.
Okay, now, I think that the other thing that we need to get to that we aren't going to miss is, let's take care of the treasurer's report. Kim?
Poor thing. Kim, she's still there?
Kim?
I'm still here.
Oh, yeah.
What did she say?
She's still here, cough, cough.
Oh.
I mean, in the interest of how sad this is on my end for you guys, can I ask if you have any questions? I think the report was fairly straightforward. I think what was updated last month was not in the context of a treasurer's report, but was to point out some of the changes and adjustments that had been made that were better reflecting the current status of our financial reports. The change in the adjustment that happens generally in an in-and-out transaction. Does anybody have any other questions on the report and the notes?
Does anybody have questions?
Yeah, it sounds like she doesn't want to walk you through it, but if you have questions.
Yeah, okay. Anyone have any questions about the report that's in front of you?
I'll move that we accept it.
The motion to accept the treasurer's report by Celeste, seconded by Amy.
We actually haven't been doing that.
Yeah.
We haven't.
What harm can it do? It's here, it's made. Any discussion? Not all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Down hands, opposed. Motion's carried, so declared. Thank you, Kim, before you lose your voice.
Sorry. On the bright side, I'm not there breathing on all you guys.
And we have the minutes of the meeting from last month that we need to, the consent agenda. What's the pleasure of the board?
Move the consent agenda.
Move the consent
Gio
agenda
Honeyford.
one by Gio, second by Linda.
Smith.
Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried, so declare. All right,
Can I just do
Yep.
two, since we have 3 minutes, I'll just do 2 quick things, and I apologize to Sue and Susan for not getting your time. I know you both prepared some stuff, but I had promised somebody, Linda, that I would give an update on the SU board representation issue, and where that stands. So that is currently incorporated into language. The agency, Donna Russo Savage, spent a long time with updates to Chapter 11 of Title 16, which is the 706 series, in order to reflect the fact that we have more unified union school districts than we do union school districts, and there's a lot of issues that needed to be cleaned up, one of which is SU board representation. So we are not pushing that as a separate item. It hasn't been introduced in a committee this session, which means it may come up sort of towards the later end of the session to start to orient the committee around what they'll need to do next year. So if people feel differently, like we ought to pull that piece out and go in on our own, I think that creates a whole other set of, well, we could probably ask to get it into a miscellaneous ed bill, but it's not the approach that I had hoped we would take, which was that it's not the VSBA coming in with one little thing, it's part of a bigger package of cleanup. So I just wanted to make sure you all were aware that that's the approach that I'm taking, and generally okay with it, even if it's not gonna address your nightmare of the moment, to the extent you have one.
Safe approach.
Yeah, and then I just wanted to just call your attention to this great event that Susan is planning for June 1st. And we're really gonna need your help promoting that event within your region.
This is in lieu of the evening workshops that we used to do?
Correct, so last year we did 7 essentials workshops around the state, they were very lightly attended, and so we're making a stab at trying something different. It'll be centrally located in Barry, it's an all-day event on a Saturday, it's gonna be in-depth and suitable for both new board members and veterans, because we're gonna approach it in new ways.
Do you have a date for that?
June 1st. You have the flyer in your packet. We're still gonna be, I think another issue with the sort of traveling the state was that you get maybe one board member from a board, and we found it really works better if we're encouraging boards as a whole to do the training. So Susan's also promoting, call me and I'll come and do the workshop with your board, rather than send her on a trip around the state and 3 people show up.
I was promoting the old evening version to a new board member, and she's like, no, it's a whole day thing. And I was like, what?
Okay, so that was, we'll have that.
We'll get you more information as we
Absolutely.
get closer, so you can help.
See, this is March, so we'll be back here in April. And the legislature will still be in session, so it'll be another fun night.
And you should also put on your calendars the upcoming joint board chair superintendent training, which is
May 15th at Lake Lori. So we haven't sent something out yet because we don't know who the board chairs are, but they're all, it's in a flux period. But superintendents have the date, and so.
That a Thursday?
It's a Wednesday night.
Wednesday night, okay.
1 to 7:30.
Any other business that we have to do tonight? If not, you'd like to make the motion?
No, I would like to say thank you to you, Nicole. You are, I'm a newbie, okay, but thank you for all that you do, and I think everybody feels pretty much the same way, so thanks. I appreciate it. And I'll make the motion.
Let the minutes reflect that the board totally supports our executive director and her workload for this board. And Linda made the motion to adjourn. Who was second? Second by Diane. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. And thank you all for
And
hanging in
it's
there.
3 minutes after, so we're all